main definition is how do you accelerate the growth of a business using what we define as an approach which boils down to 3 areas. And for us, that's products, profits, and people. These are 3 key areas that we focus on and have a roadmap built around to help us build our B2B business, but also work with our clients and build our B2C business.
Hi there. So I've got two answers to this question, and trying to find growth hacking. You've got growth hacking agencies that kind of challenging still. A short answer is working out what's stopping business from growing and fixing it. And I guess the longer answer starts to kind of break out the word growth hacking. And I kind of find it's easier to explain what growth is. And growth for a growth hacker is very much something that's focused on kind of fairly hard key metrics, kind of financially based, like number of customers, or kind of profitability or revenue or return on investment. So kind of numbers that you want to shift up. And the hacking bit is where it gets a bit more interesting, and it's kind of how you go about doing that. So it kind of means, I guess, a number of different things. One is like just cutting to the chase and doing stuff quickly. Secondly, it means just putting stuff out there that might not be perfect, but it's good enough to get feedback, so you can learn from it and work out how to kind of evolve and iterate. And I guess thirdly, it's about being quite creative, all the kind of tools and stuff you've got out there. So there's a million and one different kind of channels and tools and ways of talking to each of your customers, and getting feedback from customers, just how you kind of blend and hack those things together.
Hi guys, so in just a few words, I think a growth hacker is the only type of marketer that millennials actually love and don't hate. That's because a growth hacker is actually a tech-savvy marketer. And why do I say that? Because when you're a tech-savvy marketer, you look at everything from customer intelligence to market information as something that is programmatically available. So you look at it and you say, this is the technology that I can use to track, analyze, and optimize all of my processes that any marketer is actually familiar with. So that's it in my opinion.
Okay, great. Okay, we'll start off with quite a general question, but maybe quite important. But question to the panel is, how important do you think data is and analytics and keyword research for marketing and growth hack in general? Go on, Nick.
First, can I just get a quick show of hands, just to understand, if your main focus of your business is B2B, okay, and then B2C? Okay, so it's pretty much 50-50. So the question is, how important is data? And I think probably everyone in this room has heard the term big data bandied around a lot. It's like a real buzzword of late. From both B2B and B2C perspective, our approach has been to think of everything as having a data importance. So I've looked at this audience tonight, for example, from a B2B perspective, and a few stats that I've pulled out just in one moment. I guess let me preface this. One important element of growth for us is, both for us and for our clients, is the first principle is know your audience and use data that's available to know your audience. So some things I pulled out from some stats I pulled out about the audience today. And this is just to kind of emphasise the point that data is everywhere. So I used a tool called Nazenda. Has anyone heard of Nazenda before? Have you used it at all? It's a great tool, and it's a tool that we use to, in effect, scrape data from websites that we can then use to interpret that data in different ways. So I went onto the meetup and I used Nazenda to automate a user going into every one of the profiles of everybody who registered, and the data that we analysed from that is that 71 people who were registered found this event through Meetup, 22 found it through a colleague or through word of mouth, and 20 found it through Google Campus. So Jonathan can then use that information to know where to market his next event. So great bit of information. 29 people who registered as founders. Only 3 of them had the time to actually write I am a founder, the rest wrote just founder at. 18 are claimed to be entrepreneurs, 25 people registered as tech and digital, there's 1 who claims to be a guru, and there's 1 student. Is there a student here? And yeah, a student there. Right, so you're all professionals. So just some ideas. Interestingly, you're all here, but only 2 of you describe yourselves as passionate individuals in what you do. So just some examples of knowing your audience and the things that you're all saying that your objectives were. For me, it was 52% of you are here to, or 52% are here to learn and gain knowledge, and the rest of you are here to meet people. So it's really an example of, from a B2B perspective, particularly how to use data to understand your audience. And that's something we really do with our clients. So try to understand them, but also understand their audience, their customer themselves. In building a digital marketing strategy for our clients, we take three key elements. The first is know your audience. As an example, and I'll give some other examples shortly. The second is reach that audience where they are. And the third is to be personal and be relevant. All 3 of those things are dependent on data, and data coming from different sources. Just tell me if I'm going on a little bit too long here, but I'll give some more examples.
Not too long, guys. No. Share the mic around a bit.
Yeah, sure. I'll do that whilst I'll come back to the program.
Hi there. So I've got a kind of data background, so I think I'm clear to say, yeah, data definitely is important to both our key. And I guess when we kind of work with our clients, what we're really trying to work out is where and what's stopping customers from doing what they want to do. So we kind of look at funnels a lot and kind of user and customer journeys. So if, for instance, one of our clients has apps, how many of you guys are kind of app-based? Hands here? You web-based? By the way, you're all startups, so you can mixture of all startups, hands up? Non-startups, bigger businesses? So I guess a lot of what we're trying to do is work out, look, how do you kind of first kind of touch your customer, make them aware of your product. Typically you're trying to drive them somewhere like a website or the App Store, you're then trying to engage them, get them to do something like download or an interaction, get them to sign up, get them to purchase something, and kind of to engage on a long-term basis, and advocate, turn their kind of experience into some new people. So kind of working out user journeys and where people are in that user journey. We use a lot of data, a lot of different analytical tools. I'm guessing you're familiar with Google Analytics? Yeah. Has any of you guys use things like Mixpanel or Kissmetrics or Heap Analytics? Hands up? A couple. Well, I should definitely check out Mixpanel, and actually one we really favour about Heap Analytics. Mixpanel. And Heap Analytics, which is really cheap and really effective. They're just brilliant tools that kind of helping you work out what your funnel looks like and where kind of conversion drop-offs are occurring, and therefore you start to understand where to focus your business. So most people, most startups think the whole issue is about acquisition and how to reach people. What we found working with most of our clients is once you actually lift the lid on their business, look at the data, look at how people are coming in, where they're converting, you usually find this kind of issues slightly further down the funnel. So a couple of early clients, there was things like the payment system they're using, such jobs they use the journey where just completing their business. So data is definitely important to understand why, but it should also be mixed with more kind of qual, so kind of research data, which is literally speaking to people and getting direct feedback to kind of answer why stuff happens. Analytics are brilliant telling you what, but why. So kind of you should always like use a hybrid between and qual.
Also, Catalina.
Alright, so there was this recent study that showed actually startups have this, they're more focused on competitors and less focused on, let's say, audiences or products. And why is that? Because they get more information from competitors' existing audiences and they learn more from that. So before you even get any traction at all, or before you even have an audience to analyze, you look at what the competition is doing or whatever other companies, larger companies are doing with their customers, and you learn from them. So to be honest, I'm my experience is not as much related to data mining, or I'm very community focused, and I believe that's one thing that is going to grow and be extremely important, especially for startups. I believe that most startups have actually started with the core community, and understanding that core community actually help them with activation, retention, and acquisition. So if you don't have a community yet, look at what other startups communities are doing, how they behave, how those startups are engaging with their communities. Learn from that, and then see how your brand can actually become a little bit different, have a different tone, or maybe offer a different value proposition, and just kind of transfer that information to your uniform community. That's what I would say.
Top tips for building a community in the first place? Your experience.
So I really love the way Robinhood approached their. What they did is they actually used waiting lists. So they were like, if you want to have access to our top-notch product, what you need to do is you refer a friend, and then you'll have access prior to them. So you'll be like, you're on position 1,000, and you'll be 999. So waiting lists are really, really important. And then maybe a second tip would be try to find that kind of community that is already active. For example, Snapcard. They are a one-click payment solution that wanted to integrate all possible currencies, including cryptocurrencies. So what they did is they actually decided to only go for Bitcoin lovers because they're already very active and very passionate, and they're already like early adopters. And they, after like 2 days after they launched, they had a sign-up page up there. They got hundreds and hundreds of subscribers because they actually identified an active community that was willing to take a risk or willing to adopt something really fast. And also, what they did is they launched on a Black Friday. So here you go. You've got one-click payment solutions, a passionate community. They tapped into that and they launched on Black Friday. Got success.
Finish up your next bit.
I would just give a couple of tools. But just on that point, actually, that opening the community through a personal list, I actually experienced that today, and I'm really impressed with the approach that the company took. So if you want to have a look at a company that's actively doing it right now, they're called Property Partner. I might even share my link on Twitter, and then you can all help me move up the rankings. But I signed up with an email, got an invite in, but I'm 2,498 in the list in the queue, and I'll be bumped up if I share with others who also sign up. And I look at a tremendous way to build that, build their own database, but also build some engagement, which is great. Just some of the other tools, we do some practical things as well. So I mentioned the Zender as one, which is a great tool. It is paid for, but it's worth money. Save you a lot of time. There's some others that allow you to get data that can really help you to know your audience, and one of those is a tool called Quantcast. Quantcast has two elements. One is free, one's paid for. It will, if you have a website, it will enable you to put the tag on the site, and it will give you customer demographic and psychographic information. So what's the age makeup, gender, family status, income, education, location, etc., which can be really helpful when developing your customer acquisition strategies. There's another really good tool if you haven't got an audience currently, you've got a customer base, and you want to analyse that of competitors or other interesting companies, and it's called WisdomApp. And WisdomApp, and if you plug in your Facebook or someone else's Facebook, you get access to it, and then it analyses those fans of different companies and different group pages on Facebook. And so you can have a look at, for example, with our client, we look at the biggest competitor in the cycling space, and we get a really good understanding of how their audiences differ. And you can really break it down and get some fascinating insights that will help you to understand how your potential audience is the same or different to their audience, and what decisions you can make off the back of that. When you get a little bit more developed and you take some tools, there's one called Campile, and Campile allows you to get other variants of it, allows you to get customer feedback and understand a little more qualitative reasons to why a customer doesn't engage or what changes they might like. So some really good useful tools out there to allow you to get data and to then develop your acquisition strategies, your retention strategies, and to change and push your business accordingly.
So I just want to add, because we're very generous with practical tips here. Right, so don't be greedy. When you're building a community and you want to increase retention, what startups normally do, they're like, why don't you sign up now if you want to buy this product? Well, that's very greedy, and that will not work anymore because we have all of these alternative payment solutions that do not require login anymore. And I was reading Amazon just launched Eco, which is like a machine, and you use voice commands to say, Eco, why don't you buy me Game of Thrones or something, right? So Eco places the order for you. So what I'm trying to say is try not to use techniques that are a little bit old school now, like signups. That's okay if you want to build a community, but try to do it later on. What you can do is you can create forms, some sort of data capturing forms. Maybe users do not need to sign up, but all they need to do is give you some information, like maybe their Twitter handle, maybe their name, and what they're looking for, because you want to know what they're looking for. Why did they end up on your page? And if they decide to leave because they don't like what they see so far, that's totally fine, don't panic. Maybe they will be part of your community later, but all you need to do is understand more information so you can maybe use intercom to kind of use to design better emails and say, hey, I kind of noticed that you were on my page or maybe interested in that. Why did you decide to leave? Maybe 10% discount will help you? I don't know, right? So you can just gather as much information without having to force users to do anything, because that's always they can offer.
I've got a question here from Andrew Wilk. Andrew Wilkes, I know he's here. Andrew, you remember your question? Okay. Well, it's another nice general one, but it's if you had just one thing you could blow your budget on, I guess, maybe as a cash-strapped startup, what would it be on? And I'm kind of thinking on sort of particularly Google AdWords, because some people spend a lot of money on Google AdWords, but maybe that might not be correct for a startup. I don't know, I'm keen to hear your views. So, Luke, do you want to go again?
From a B2B perspective or B2C, Andrew? Both. Both. Give me a second on that one.
Yeah, go on.
What I definitely not recommend is A, blowing your budget on one thing. And if it was, it probably wouldn't be Google AdWords. So it's not, I've probably worked quite a lot of different startups over the last 18 months. As part of what we do, work with WAYRA, I've worked with about 12 of their startups. And we've seen an awful lot of people at different stages trying to do different stuff. And one of the clear differences and kind of diminishes we see is those who have achieved product market fit versus those who haven't. And if you haven't yet achieved product market fit, I've spent all my energy and efforts and time basically making sure I can absolutely ship our product that people were enjoying, liking, and I was getting positive feedback from users. Even if this is only a handful, you don't need many, but just kind of science and evidence that your product's brilliant. And if you've got kind of product market fit and you're confident that your product's brilliant, then we kind of normally recommend going down kind of like testing kind of process. So rather than blowing away cash in one place, is to test out a couple of channels that you think are going to work, whether it's going through SEO optimization or you might be using AdWords to research stuff like what kind of key messaging should go to different target audiences. AdWords is quite good at actually just allowing you to test stuff. Facebook advertising for apps can be actually surprisingly kind of cost efficient. But then also kind of looking at social and community and just putting your fingers in lots of different pies and starting to work out what's going to work and what's not going to work. And this key to that is part of the whole tools thing, using UTM codes. So if you're familiar with UTM codes, these are kind of like when you see these really long URLs with lots of code in there. When you click on that, Google Analytics and picks stuff, you can work out exactly where something's come from. So tracking what's driving traffic to your website, whatever it is.
You know, guys, I mean, I really like all the critical first of all about where you should spend your money. But in the end, if you look at how, if you look at your startup from a human perspective, what makes it work is who is actually working on your side. Hire the right person. Hire a tech person who knows what he's doing, and maybe you won't have to spend that much money aimlessly on all of these fake products. So hire the right person, and maybe that's the best way to spend your budget.
So, my expertise is paid advertising, paid social display. Actually, I don't think that's where you should necessarily grow your budget first and foremost. From a B2B perspective, one of the best things we do, and the most effective things is to bring our PR marketing in-house and have full ownership of the way that our brand is represented to the press, to the community, and full management of all of the relationships. And that had a real positive impact. And I went to an event last week for one of these swiping keyboard apps, which was really, really good. And they'd spent all of their time and effort on PR for an app, for a keyboard app. And it was tremendously positive. So I think the power of positive PR and being able to control that message in that is really important. Because it depends on the size of your budget. If you're a bootstrap startup, then be very, very diligent and careful with your spend, test and learn. If you've got some significant funding behind you, and that company got £2 million funding last week, and they blew their budget on a giant stand that cost them £1,000. I don't necessarily advocate that twice, but very much depends on your level of spend. But I actually, despite my area of expertise, don't advocate necessarily starting with growing the budget on paid channels. If you do, then be very careful. I see a lot of people making a lot of mistakes and wasting lots of money.
Well, I forget what I've got at the beginning. There's down there somewhere, I put the hashtag, which is growth hackers. So if any of you on Twitter, it'd be great if you could tweet some of these words of wisdom and pick them up from the hashtag, which is growth hackers. And Giuliano over there is doing videos, so that will go up on my jonathanlee.net site with a bit of text, and I can embed a few tweets from anyone who uses that hashtag. I've got a bit of a lawyer question here, or maybe not such a lawyer question, but a lot of growth hacking seems to be people doing things that are sort of flirting on the boundaries of legality, and I know as a lawyer there's tones of legislation that in many cases you can, in fairness, but you can kind of ignore, or there are some of it which people take less seriously than the rest. But I wonder if any of you guys on the panel have examples that maybe you've not been involved with or heard of, where people are kind of taking shortcuts, where they're getting around the Data Protection Act or whatever it might be. Anything come to mind?
There's this book, it's called Trust Me Online. It's written by a guy who got the job as a marketing director at American Apparel when he was about 21 without any formal education. And he did a whole lot of really dark, we don't want to talk about what he did, but you can read that stuff. And I've seen some people doing shady things, and I don't think that's going to help you at all. And why is that? Because, again, I come from a community perspective, and if you want to be friends with your community, I mean, if you want to have a brand that people want to hang out with, if your brand would be a person, and your customer would want to have a beer with your brand, then that's okay. But if you kind of cross them or do things that are not all right, then you're kind of screwed for, the rest of your product life.
No, I agree with that sentiment. But there might also be some things that you can not doesn't involve screwing people over as such, but there's sort of rules that you can maybe stop reading. I don't know. Anything comes on?
So, I guess where really good stuff is people like Google and Facebook, LinkedIn, and social media and internet stuff. It's just basically a series of algorithms with rules set which are kind of, in some respects, there to be kind of virtual. So it doesn't take too long kind of pushing Twitter to work out how to get kind of banned and something. It can suspend it for following and then unfollowing, refollowing people and being a bit too aggressive. But what we've done has been quite successful, which is probably a bit dirty and not particularly glamorous, but it's been really effective. It's like scraping of kind of websites. I think of like two of my clients who worked on where we've used Gumtree. And it's basically just going through listings of Gumtree, scraping stuff off. And you can argue it's in the kind of public domain because on Gumtree, even though they kind of slightly vary it. But then basically, kind of scraping email addresses, mobile phone numbers to then kind of automate messaging to people. And obviously, what you never expect, like 100% success rate, response rate from that. If you start to get volume, if you handle messaging well, so you don't put people off, actually, it's surprisingly quite efficient and effective, really cheap ways of reaching targets.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. It's notion of using the Zender. There's, I guess, you have to be very careful as well. I came across a company a couple of weeks ago who looked like they were getting good traction in a community on Twitter. People were saying some great things about it, and it was really trending. I thought, there's a real movement here. Until I spotted one tweet that said, at this company, or a name them, will you please stop your spamming on Twitter? And when I looked at it, actually all of the tweets were quite similar tone, similar trend, similar number of followers with on those people that were tweeting about them. And it became very clear that it had been set up to look that way. Lots of people do that, it may be effective, but it only takes a couple of people who are smart enough to spot it and then call it out and really damage your brand. And I think it will ultimately damage your brand by doing it if they don't stop and get super to new people. So yes, there are definitely some techniques that you can use. We got extremely good at paid search and advertising by pushing the boundaries of what the optimization guidelines are. We've had accounts suspended because if we pushed them too far, but also that's a very good thing for us as well because it's helped us build relationships with Google to understand those boundaries in much more detail. So definitely push the boundaries and try and keep them within the law. I would advise that. And just be careful that you're not taking shortcuts that can ultimately lead you to being caught out as being slightly fraudulent in how genuine you are.
A popular question came up a couple of times, which I guess is related to growth hacking, is getting content to go viral and to spread, and what the key aspects, to the extent they really are, and that will help people do that. Again, maybe a minimum budget. Catalina, do you go?
Right, so apparently 70% of the content associated to a brand can actually be generated only by community, only by your followers. So if you want to do it right, you should look into influencer management. So try to find those people who have who are respected, they have influence, they have authority. Reach out to them, and once they indirectly or directly endorse what you're doing, then of course your chances of increase. But virality is a tough nut to crack. It used to be very visual. It used to be something that is that was entertaining, that was weird, quirky. It may not be that important anymore, so I believe that what you need to focus is on finding ways in which your followers, your users are actually generating the content for you. And that will help you much more on the long run, rather than creating one viral campaign, or trying to.
Again, I'm from a paid advertising background, but some limited recommendations on content that we see work well for our clients. One is video. Video content for our clients is working tremendously well. Some of those clients are real lifestyle spaces, so surfing, surf apparel, cycling, etc. But some of them aren't, and they just get creative with the videos that they create, and people really engage with videos. Going back to the question on when you spend your budget, actually it can be really hard in getting that first engagement with some good content, and you can actually spend a little bit of budget just to see that content in smart places reaching the right audience. So go back to the data, know who your audience are, create some really cool content that they're going to engage with, and then seed it in the right places and pay a little bit for that. And on Facebook, for example, you can seed a video that you create through a promoted message, through a promoted ad in stream, and you can target people based on very, very tight targeting. So, for example, one of our clients is a watch retailer, and we can therefore target, they know that 21 that girls who are approaching their 21st birthday like to select the watch for their parents to buy them. So they're creating some video content for that, and we'll then post that or pay for that video content to be promoted in stream to girls aged 18 to 21 with an upcoming birthday. So based on a life event as a targeting option. With new Facebook Atlas feature, you can get even more targeted based on the user's off-site behaviours. So where Facebook's got all of their tags, they're collecting that data and saying we'll be able to target people based on them indicating an interest in their upcoming birthday or watches, or a combination of things. So by doing that, we're creating some cool content and seeding that with the right people, and hopefully that will get picked up with the wider community through sharing by those users, and therefore free. So that's a little bit of advice in that regard. Video, think mobile, and spend a little bit of money seeding it in a smart way.
Better open up to questions from the floor. So has anyone got any questions they want to keen to ask? No? Anyone? Normally there's loads of people want to ask something. Okay, well I'll go back to the questions I already got there. Sure, no? Oh, we've got a take in the video.
Do you think in the future of newsletter and email still, because people receive a lot of spam today? So should we rely on social media like Facebook or Twitter, but at the same time,
I've thought that
social
myself
media can
recently,
change the rules and
our newsletters and email campaigns kind of dead, dying. We shouldn't concentrate on them anymore, and social media is more relevant.
social media can change rules
Yeah.
like Facebook.
Alright, go on in. Great, thanks.
So it's a good question. So I think email is probably one of the least sexy kind of media channels out in them. But it's surprising actually how still effective it is. So if you think about your own kind of personal consumption of stuff, that like I know in my life, the email's pretty big, even my team has gone on Slack over the last couple of days. But I think what is definitely true is that people switch off from emails. Like, one of the biggest turn-offs people have from emails is when you open it and you see it's immediately templated, and it's kind of got the borders, the graphics and stuff, and it's all squashed, and you think it's clearly just like a marketing message. So a really, really effective way of using email is just to be actually incredibly basic about it. So having a template which looks like it's a Gmail campaign, so it looks like someone's handwritten it. Just keeping them really, really short. So there's not loads and loads of kind of copy, it's literally straight to the point. And a cheap little growth hack or tip is, even if you send out automated emails, is to put something like at the bottom of it, sent from my iPhone, and be very personal about it. So if you're the CEO of a company, it says, hi Liam, how's it going, how are you getting on with Elance or something else? And it just says sent from my iPhone. Some people will generally think it's sent from their iPhone, and someone actually hasn't typed it out. And emails who don't, or suddenly will be more comfortable, and there's a bit of warmth in there now, kind of genuineness. So actually find that being, stripping out all the templates, getting back to basics, basic text messaging, it looks like it's a kind of Gmail email, very personal, stuff with your own user personnel, etc. Actually is a really effective way of talking to people.
So I'm glad you said that, because it's absolutely spot on. That's what we've done. And just to add to that, you don't necessarily need the smart, clever email service providers or web editors. You can actually just use Outlook and Word and run a mail merge and send an email that looks like a genuine email sent from your Outlook account, And if you do it in a really targeted way, again using Excel to segment the senders and make the email relevant to them, then actually it's really, really effective from a B2B perspective. So for example, recently there was a travel event and we created 4 unique bits of content for 4 different types of recipients. One in cruise, car hire, hotel, flights. And then we segmented the recipient list by each one of those 4 areas, sent them an email, all automated, so we sent 1,000 emails in total, pretty legal, all automated, but so it was relevant to each user. And the response rate was actually amazing. So if you've got Outlook, if you've got Word, and you can use the mail merge feature, it's really, really effective. One other little feature as well is if you send out an email to, let's say, 500 people, you'll get maybe, in the recent one we did 10% response rate, but then if you then follow that up with a second email and change the subject line to RE, semicolon, and then copy it in and say something along the lines of, I'm going to an event next week, will you be there? We'd love to have a catch up. And the response rate to that was about 20%, so 25%, so really effective. And at that event I went to have 4 really good meetings and 2 proposals coming out of that. So from a B2B perspective, absolutely, pretty much anything goes. And a B2C perspective, certainly be more careful, and there's a lot more legislation to be aware of from a B2C perspective. But again, for our clients, as people know, it's still a very effective channel. It isn't a effective channel, but it's still very, very effective as a form of marketing. So it should be done, but it should be personal, it should be relevant, and it will be a lot more engaging. It'll get much better response.
Well, actually, I'm going to give you a tip to make email sexy. So what we found a really nice and effective way of using email is if you take 100,000 people who have onto email, before you email, you actually have to load into Facebook, and you use kind of custom targeting for Facebook advertising. That means you can then serve messaging just those people in your email list. So you might take a whole load of, say, lapsed customers from your database. You kind of plug it into Facebook, you expect a kind of 60% match rate. That means you can then serve advertising to them. But if you want to do it on the cheap, you don't really want someone to click on your adverts because Facebook advertising works on a cost-per-click basis. So you kind of almost have like a negative call to action, or you kind of downweight a call to action. So you basically want to use Facebook as a kind of means of serving messages to your audience. And if you can be bothered, you can say, look, you can receive an email from us in 5 days, 4 days, 3 days, 2 days, 1 day. And actually just use Facebook as a nice warm-up to the fact that they're going to receive an email from you. So by the time they get an email from you, they've already kind of consciously or subconsciously soaked in a whole load of other messages via Facebook. We find that actually that's quite simple to put an email. It's just quite a nice way, I guess, of both hacking and taking email and Facebook advertising, 2 things that look quite different from each other, and kind of bringing those rules together to get something new.
You can also do the same on Twitter as well. So custom audiences and custom listing. Same thing on Twitter. So if your B2B brand is not like Facebook, which is the case for us, we use that same technique on Twitter.
Yeah, okay, lovely. Any more questions from the audience? I've got another one myself. Yeah, talking about technical stuff, and it all seems to be quite digital related, but I think maybe growth hacking, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, can also apply to non-technical hacks or non-digital marketing. I've got a friend who runs an digital agency over in Vancouver, and he seems to be blogging a lot recently about guerrilla marketing. I think that's maybe the right word, I don't know, but doing stuff in the real world, not online, to generate lots of attention and buzz. I don't know whether you guys, anything that comes to mind. Well, yeah, maybe going back to like traditional PR.
It reminded me of something actually. I just happened to have this and remember I picked it up. So yeah, Offline Hacks is a company that was recently, I haven't even read this to be honest with you, but Dojo app. And they've clearly, Dojo app here by any chance? Oh, there you are, back there. That's a coincidence. So you guys busted me as I was coming out of Farringdon Station and gave me this piece of paper, which I still have today. And I thought that was a really smart way. Maybe you identified that your target audience is in and around Farringdon, or maybe you've tested a few different locations. But I'll read a little bit out. Hi, I'm Nick. Here are a few questions to ask about stuff on the way to work. Do you have two friends? Do you like being chauffeur-driven? Do you like the alcohol and food, etc.? So I'm engaged. And I've still got this, and I've just shared it with everyone. So it's clearly one form of offline hacking that I thought was actually quite smart and free. Just took a bit of time and a little bit of paper to print on. So, so there's one example. I'll have a look for some others. Well done, guys.
I really love what TransferWise is doing. Take a look at some of their campaigns. Recently, they've hired a few really good-looking chaps and ladies to walk, well, not naked, but just underwear, because it goes along with what they're trying to say, that all payments and transactions should be transparent. And banks should have nothing to hide. So they are just doing all of these crazy things to get your attention. And I think on the third, for Halloween, what they did is they had a few people painted, paint, and they were looking like skeletons. So again, it went along the lines with the idea all the bad fees are dead. So here's how we are. We're like working, we're different, and we're not ashamed to show it.
Just to add to that and kind of bring it around, so whilst again we're paid with digital only, we certainly don't think of only digital and online channels. We encourage our clients and ourselves, we also think about integrating channels, both online and offline. So how do you get offline, how do you hack offline engagement? Think about the whole thing. So in this example, perhaps they also have a videographer with them to take some video. Who will then upload it onto social networks, and there's a little bit of money behind that, and for advertising, for landing page lead generation. So think about the whole thing as an integrated campaign, not in silos of digital media and offline, or even smaller silos within that. Think about the entire thing, and take it all back to data. Think about actually how you're going to track the metrics that are important to you, whether using UTM parameters in Google Analytics, which is free, or using some other tools to be able to track the metrics that are important to you, and that's really important. So the whole campaign, offline, online, integrated, and make sure you can measure the success either way, so you can learn from it and improve it in the next time.
Anyone else? Question from the audience? Yeah, Jeff. Ray?
If you only have an idea, how would you test it, and which mediums would you use?
Good question. So if you've just got an idea, you've done absolutely nothing, or how do you begin, where do you test it?
If you've only got an idea, it's a little bit more difficult, obviously. But some things that I've seen some friends do, who's setting up small businesses, is to use Twitter as a way of finding users who have declared an engagement with a particular type of, with a particular interest. So, if your interest area is snowboarding, and you've got an idea in the snowboarding space, then you can easily reach out on Twitter and find people who are passionate about snowboarding and might be a particular type of snowboarding. Reach those users and try and have a conversation with them and get them on board and ask them to give you some feedback. But that's one technique that I've seen work. Also, you're looking for good feedback on your idea. And you only need a small closed group of individuals to help you with that. You don't necessarily want to spread your idea too far and wide, because you get to a point where you've got ownership and some barriers to entry for that idea. That would be one part.
So yeah, I've got two answers to that question. One is, echoing, is just basically to go and speak to people. Depending on what you're trying to do, is physically trying to have one-to-one conversations with them, validate it and see if it's a good idea or not. And instead of the Twitter idea, actually Google AdWords is a really great way, quite cheap, cost-effective way of finding what's likely. So kind of doing a really £50 kind of PPC campaign, driving someone to a landing page where you might have like a very top-line proxy of what your product's going to be that doesn't exist. Having a very simple email capture form, just gauging how many people click on the ads, who goes onto the landing page, who goes and signs up, can give you quite a good indication quite quickly of whether an idea is related or not.
I guess if you have an idea, I guess you have an idea with regards to how much you want people to pay for your idea. So create a landing page where users, your potential customers almost agree to be charged. So you do some sort of pre-sale campaign. But I mean, it depends. Is your idea related to services or is it related to products? If it's products, how about try something like Indiegogo or Kickstarter? If it's services, how about try a combination of a landing page and Twitter ads that are very optimized for activation and immediate sign-ups.
Any more questions? We'll wrap up in a few minutes. But chat with that.
Yeah, so I've got a question around how a lot of growth hacking seems to be, and maybe rightly so, geared towards B2C applications and products. But what about thoughts around how that can really be applied? A lot of the same principles can be applied in the B2B world. As we see in B2B, you're often doing a lot of outreach and direct sales, or maybe marketing can be used for some lead generation. But again, as you move towards enterprise, it's often sales driven. Do you have any thoughts around applying some of the same principles of growth hacking there?
So particular stuff to bear in mind for B2B, maybe
So I've given a couple of examples, but you know, in the one problem in relation to the custom lists on Twitter, and this one I've asked a question, is that most people who sign up on Twitter, they sign up with a personal email address, Gmail account. And for us, most of our database has business email addresses. So running custom lists on Twitter isn't necessarily going to be very effective because there won't be a very high match rate. There are some ways around that, and there's an Excel spreadsheet which is going around online where you can plug in a user's name, their full name and their company, and that email address, and it will create multiple iterations of that business email address until it finds the right one that is registered on LinkedIn, because a lot of people want to LinkedIn. And I think it's about 50-50 people sign up on LinkedIn use a business email address or a personal email address. And this tool will allow you to identify all the business email addresses, and which one's right and which one's registered on LinkedIn. And you can use that through targeting on LinkedIn. Another thing you can do in your B2B space is build your audience, build your network, of your target audience, download your entire network from LinkedIn offline, and it will also download your their email addresses that they have registered. Now, there are 50% that have registered on LinkedIn with their personal email address, which you haven't already got, you can now target them on Twitter, for example, and so have Twitter CRM targeting. So the problem to start with is you didn't know what their Twitter registered email address was. By building the network in LinkedIn, downloading it, you can then use that to reach that audience on Twitter. So that's one really good example. The other one is one, I don't know if you were here when we talked about using email mail merge on using Word and Outlook. Again, that's a really good way to reach a large audience and make it look like a genuine email. Keep it short, keep it genuine, but it will allow you to do it on scale. So there's some of this as well.
So, one of the most effective ways that I've seen so far is just try to reach out to those smaller companies, smaller, medium-sized companies, and say, hey, I've got this product, it does that, and it can help you in this way. How about you let me run a test on, for employees, if for example, if you're developing software that can be used by employees, how about you let me test it with you guys? You get 3 to 5 really interesting, cool companies, and then you learn from that process. You feature them on your client's page, and that will help you get actual sales later in the B2B world.
Well, I'll do a quick one. What I've noticed recently is actually a lot of B2B companies, both big and small, increasingly look at like consumer-facing brands. And you have to look at kind of SaaS-based software packages that are incredibly popular nowadays in the B2B space, to see that half their popularity is because they emulate stuff that consumers are familiar with the consumer side. In fact, we've got clients that does office space, has an absolutely terrific website, but actually the actually now taking them looks and resembles Airbnb, and very graphical and very simple, single focus with a search bar. And in fact, the issues that you're often trying to overcome are exactly the same. It's like, how do I explain to the user in a headline what it is I do, how do I establish credibility in that space, how do I get enough excitement and interest to get them on to go and explore further and engage. So I think actually just you can learn an awful lot from the B2C space and apply that to B2B.
And just to wrap up on that point as well, we did some work with constant analysis of where our sales come from, and so you don't actually need to get, you don't need all these growth hacking approaches. We 70% of our new clients come from referrals from our network, and the conversion rate of those referrals is so much higher than from other sources. About 50% of all the requested proposals that come in from a referral go on to being a client. So the truth is, if you've got a limited time, which we'll have, then really focus that time on building a network and leveraging the referrals that that network can deliver for you. And reward positive behaviour. So if somebody does deliver a really good referral for you and it converts, then buy them a gift. We've got we refer partners to businesses, and so we've got a coffee machine, popcorn machine, and the whole office uses it, and it's known as coming from that partner. And it doesn't have to be expensive. So when somebody gives us a referral or does something nice for us, we'll send them a Google Chromecast, which costs £30, which is a great little device, and it just makes us kind of memorable in that regard. It's not bribing, but it's just rewarding, I guess, the kind of behaviour that you appreciate. So your network is tremendously important.
Cool. Maybe one last question. Anyone? Great.
Does it make you a sellout if you follow trending hashtags that are irrelevant to?
So, does it make you a sellout if you follow trending hashtags that are? Oh, right. So, okay, if you're tweeting on a whatever account and you're just putting on X factor hashtag, what have you?
Yeah.
Because that's popular and it's not relevant.
Yeah.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay. I know. Is that?
The whole following hashtags or trending on or putting hashtags into your tweets and so on. I've seen that a lot at the moment. That seems to be quite a trend. I don't know if you're coming for something in Lewis Hamilton's stuff. He's got a lot of followers. His recent tweets have just been entirely hashtags from start to finish. So maybe it does, but that point kind of reminded me, and took me back to another point as well, which is very similar in some regards, in that as a new business you may have established competitors, and again I'm thinking B2B space, but not necessarily only B2B. Those established competitors, now you are entitled to be able to bid within Google AdWords on their brand terms. Okay? And actually it can be quite an effective technique to do so. Geo-target so that they don't see it, okay, in their office, wherever they're based, find out where their office is, exclude their office location from the targeting, bid on their brand term, in a lower position, you don't need to be in position number one. And then B2B space, right, what we know is, because we use this tool called lead forensics, again, a really useful tool, in the B2B space, it will allow you to see which businesses are visiting your website. So we know today RBS went on our website, for example, and tomorrow we can then put a little campaign together to try and reach the marketing director at RBS. So that's the lead forensics, great tool. Now, so going back to the point, what you can do is target your competitor brands on their brand term, take it in position 2 or 3. We know that our clients often search our brand term on Google to find our office location. Okay, I know that, because I see that in the data and the analytics. And that'll be the same for your competitors. So in your B2B space, the clients of your competitors are searching their brand terms. If you're there in position 2, then you're getting some eyeballs on your brand. Start to build some recognition, and it's all about being front of mind. And you can do a similar thing in the B2C space, and it can be really effective. Be careful, because you can spend a lot of money, because your quality score can be deemed as, or your quality score can be low, because you're not getting on relevant terms to the content on your site. So do be careful you don't spend too much money there, but it's a tactic worth trying. So similar to the hashtags on Twitter, but slightly different thing, and brand terms and AdWords.
Yeah, I guess I know from my own experience that I tend to unfollow accounts I follow on Twitter who start suddenly tweeting over an X Factor is on, because even though I might be watching the TV in front of me, I'm not really interested. I don't really want to go to Twitter to learn about X Factor. I want to kind of find more insightful information. That's my own personal view, maybe others are different. So that's maybe not effective in that sense. But Catalina? No? Yeah? Okay, cool. Well, we're done. Thanks a lot for staying with us, everyone. Juliana's doing video, so if you want to go back and maybe watch it again or take some points from it, it'll be on jonathanlee.net, which is my site, so another week or so I'll be up there with some bit of blurb around the video and a few tweets, hopefully, if anyone's used the hashtag. But we'll go down to, unfortunately, I haven't been able to provide food and drink this time, but next time we'll be back at Google Campus on the 3rd of December. I'm going to be away, but Luke Havard is a kind of motivational speaker. I could probably describe him a lot better, but he's worth listening to, and kind of like a British Seth Godin type person. But he's giving a talk which a lot of people have great things to say from when they've been to see him before. So that's 3rd of December. Thanks a lot for coming along. Thanks very much to the panel, and we'll be down at the Slug and Lettuce, which is just outside, which you probably walk past on the way here. So if you guys want to stay around, chat to anyone, have a beer, please go there. Okay. But thanks a lot for coming, and thanks a lot for everybody here.